Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Day Overthinker podcast. My name is Collin, and I'm your host. This week's episode is with Nick Jonsson. Nick Jonsson is a author, speaker, life coach, and triathlete. He shares with us his story of rising success in Indonesia in the corporate business world, and he eventually burnout and led to some years of addiction and hitting rock bottom, and he's building back up. He's built back up from sobriety and also from being vulnerable. He has a book called Executive Loneliness. He has a TEDx talk out there about sleep optimization strategies, which we discussed. We also talked about the book a little bit. We talked about his struggles with addiction and what he's up to now. Great guy. This is episode number 94 with Nick Jonsson. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Day Overthinker podcast. My name is Collin, and I'm your host. Today's guest is Nick Jonsson. He is an author, keynote speaker, life and business coach, and a triathlete. Welcome, Nick. You're coming from a long ways away. Where are you located at again?
I'm located in Southeast Asia. I'm mainly in Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore. Today in Thailand.
Nice. I've never been. I've heard good things.
Thank you.
And you're originally from?
Sweden. Born in Sweden and educated in Australia and 21 years now in Asia.
Okay. So you've been around the map.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you, like me, are somebody who does a lot of different things. You're sort of I would call you a Renaissance man. If you've heard that, have you heard that phrase before?
I heard it once or twice, but not for a while. So yes, but thank you.
Yeah. I think it's a badge of honor. Because we're people that like to try new things, and we don't like boring. So that's always good to talk to somebody like-minded. And the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of give you a chance to introduce yourself, what you've been working on, and what you've been if you've been training, or what message you're trying to give to my listeners today. Just a couple little things, and then we can get started with the conversation here.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, born in Sweden, educated in Australia. I was a late starter. I was 23 years of age when I started university. Before that, I worked in constructions. But once I started at university, I only looked one way, and that was up. I was studying really hard to get scholarships. I became sort of an anxious overachiever already at my university. I brought that with me then into the workplace, working my way up. I say that I elbowed my way up the corporate ladder. Once at the top, I felt very lonely, isolated, and had a lot of issues that I didn't work on. And I used instead drugs, alcohol, and so on to medicate myself. With that, then I was looking for my rock bottom. It took 3 years for me to spiral down, hit rock bottom, and then I crawled back out of the ashes almost 8 years ago. So that's my little journey very quickly. And after my recovery, then I've been supporting others and helping them with also their challenges, and also working on a lot of prevention, so people shouldn't have to fall as deep as I did.
Yes, preventative measures are very, very important. I also, I wanted to address the burnout, because like that, it was a corporate job.
It was a corporate job, and in fact, it was my dream job. I had spent about 10 years working my way there, and I was managing hospitals and clinics in Indonesia as a general manager. So it was a big role, big responsibility. Also, all the benefits that I wanted, yeah.
That's great. But it comes with the side of, sounds like you were a workaholic and then you turned into an alcoholic at some point there in
Yeah,
between. Takes one to know one, so I totally get it. But yeah, I was listening to your TEDx talk, and you talked not only about drugs and alcohol, but just bad habits in general. Were some of those bad habits that you noticed now that were happening that kind of took you down that downward spiral?
yeah. I think once you have alcohol in your life and you need to medicate yourself to
Yeah.
cope, then the biggest issue in my life was that was my way of coping. I did not feel safe to open up to my bosses, mentors. I didn't have a coach. I had never seen a therapist or psychologist. So I didn't deal with my issues. My way was just to close down,
Hmm.
keep it secret, and just work as hard as I could. And that worked for a few years until it didn't work anymore. And then my way then of dealing with when it became the pressure increased was to drink more, and that eventually the wheels fell off. So that was just my poor mechanism of coping. That was the issue of everything, really.
Yeah, it's yeah, because I heard you say something in your speech about eating, and then not sleeping enough, and then that turned into a whole thing with sleep, um, and the importance of sleep and rest to perform at your best is what I gathered from what I heard here on the TEDx talk anyway. And if there was somebody out there that's struggling with their sleep, because there's so many different factors and there's so many different things, like what would you say are some good, like, simple recommendations for people who want to get better sleep?
Yeah, and indeed, sleep was. I, I was sleeping very poorly at those days, really bad, and the sleep I got was from exhaustion. Much less
Hmm.
hours, and of course, when we are eating bad and drinking alcohol, we're not getting the sleep we need. So obviously, the first things are to look after our diet and of course reduce alcohol or stop alcohol, and at least not drink alcohol just before someone is going to bed. That will set you up for a better night's sleep. But most importantly, also, I think it is, to move. And we don't have to talk about exercise per se, but, even being out or getting some daylight, getting some fresh air, at least going for a walk.
Yeah, moving.
Just yeah, it's just moving around and doing what we love. And I'm not a fan of gyms, for example. I don't spend more than an hour or two a year in a gym, but I do move around, and for me that means walking, running, jogging, cycling, swimming, and as much as I can. That means swimming in the ocean. I'm blessed with that. So
That's awesome.
in that sense, everyone can do what they want to do, but it's about moving around, and then you're setting yourself up for a good night's sleep. And also with in regards to thinking, right? It's about not overthinking before and having some people to talk to. My worst sleep was because I didn't have a way to address my feelings, and I would keep me awake overthinking when I was trying to sleep, rather than having dealt with it.
Okay. So what was kind of the first step besides the alcohol in figuring out, what's the right amount of sleep for you, and what are some of the best practices as far as a good night, like routine before going to bed? I've heard, avoiding screen time, obviously the alcohol, not drinking alcohol right before you go to bed, not eating right before you go to bed. I know some of the simple ones, but what were some of the things that you implemented and still implement today to get that right amount of sleep, or even find the right amount of sleep for you, because everybody's different?
Absolutely, and you're right, Colin. It is unique. What I did at that time when I did a TEDx, it's a bit over a year ago, I did that. When I prepared, I read all the best-selling books on sleep. I read all the books around habits like Atomic Habits, the 5 a.m. Club. I studied
Hmm.
journals and so on sleep. And I actually made a summary. It's on my LinkedIn page with my 50 tips on sleep habits that anyone can perhaps look up on my LinkedIn.
We'll have that link.
That
We'll have that link in the description. Don't worry.
Yeah, fantastic. We can do that. So there I shared what worked for me. And again, it's individual, but maybe someone can pick up some of those tips from me. And you touched on it there before, it is preparing the night before. While people, think about the 5 a.m. club, it means that, getting up really early and cutting my sleep short. That's not the point. The point is that you actually prepare. The 5 a.m. club starts the night before. It's about being quite disciplined, organized, structured, and getting ready for it. And actually that you are in control of your life. You're not letting, for example, Netflix being in charge of your life, because you watch
Uh,
one episode and then it
been
auto
there.
plays the next and the next and the next, right? And same with social media. You're not just letting it scroll away. You know that, okay, I have 10 minutes now before it's time to turn off my devices. You can even put an alarm on that. So you have, let's say 2 hours before you're going to bed, which is when you're not eating, you're not drinking, and no TV, no social media. If you want to do something, then have a paper books by your bed table and remove
Mm.
everything else. So you're sort of having that detox and getting ready for sleep. And also make sure that, uninstall any TVs or devices in the bedroom and have that in another room. And then just prepare yourself for it, because if you want to have a good night's sleep, you got to prepare for it the night before.
So having a room that's just for sleep, nothing else, and reading maybe, but
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have mounted my TV in my room. But I know a lot of people do that. A lot of people like sleep with the TV on. I don't do that, but we're so obsessed with screens and so hooked on our, whether it's TV or a phone, tablet, whatever. Mine is usually my phone. I try not to be on it up until I fall asleep, but I've broken that habit so many times and gone back and forth. But um, and also, yeah, I know like the Kindle, you can turn it to like where it's not like a regular screen. If you have a Kindle, if you're one of those people that likes to, because I don't know about where you're located, but in the U.S., if you have a Kindle, you can tap into local libraries and you can rent books for free for like a couple weeks, and then just you don't really have to return them. You just don't have access anymore. So that's kind of a cool thing that my dad does. That he just rolls through books, and yeah, and it's a cheaper way to do it too. I don't know if you guys have that option there. I know you have obviously have Kindles, but I don't know how the library system works there.
Yeah, I do have a Kindle, and also, I have one foot in Sweden where you have those kind of systems. And I
Okay.
carry the Kindle and I read it during the daytime. I read it when I travel and so on. When I'm waiting somewhere during the day, I have it with me in my backpack always. But I also keep a stack of paper books on the bed table. It's a different thing, just to make sure there's no
Yeah.
devices, and also for the no light screen. And there's a lot of, I have, at least in my community, a lot of places where you trade books. You just take a new one and you put it back and so on. And we have book clubs and so on.
Like
And
the neighbor, like are they like the boxes that people have, like in the we have some, we have those too. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
those are
yeah.
cool.
So I have a paper stack typically of books, just for that sake, in the bedroom. And uh, also, I mean, we spoke about, uninstalling the TV, and I went the length during that time actually to pay for a painter to actually remove the installation of the TV in my bedroom deliberately
Yeah,
and remove it. And it was a big job, costed some money, but that investment, that was worthwhile.
worth
Just
it.
make sure that I wouldn't actually have it on. And in regards to that, also in March 2020, when the pandemic just broke out, I was watching too much news, and I realized that I was actually almost having a relapse in my mental health recovery.
Mm.
I was 2 years into recovery, and the news sent, with all the pandemic news and lockdowns and so on, sent me right back, and I was in a bad space. What I did then was I decided, and I promised for life, to never watch the news again. And I haven't since then, and I never will. And what I mean with that is all the BBC, the CNN, and so on. I have not watched even 1 minute. If I ever face a TV somewhere, doesn't matter where I am, I will politely ask the people if we can sit somewhere else, ask them to turn it off, switch channel, turn down the music, not the volume, or I should say, just not face it. So I have not read
Yeah,
or watched news. And that is to protect myself. And if I was a politician, yes, I would have to, but I'm not. So I'm just trying to do the best I can for my community instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's a hell of a commitment. I respect that. Yeah, because well, I'm in the United States, so things are a little. I mean, they're interesting all over the world, but different times in in our country right now. So a lot of division, stuff like that, and it's just like, yeah. So good on you for staying away from all that, because it's a lot of negativity, and it just, yeah, and it's a big waste of time. It's almost just like, scrolling TikTok or whatever, or doom scrolling as they call it. And yeah, and if you're not a politician, and if it's not directly impacting you, like, what's the point, So I totally respect that. That's awesome that you've been able to implement that, especially when you implemented that in the pandemic, during the pandemic, start of it.
Yeah, and the only issues was that I was in Singapore at the time, and it was quite hard lockdowns there. The only issue with that was that I was not really aware of the COVID laws and regulation that
Oh,
happened, and people saw me as a bit of ignorant sometimes. But there was some WhatsApp coming daily with updates, so I just checked that from time to time to make sure I didn't violate the rules too much. It was
yeah.
quite rigid in Singapore.
Yeah, it depends on where you were located. Here it was dependent on like the state, because like every state had different rules. I live in Iowa, which we were pretty lax. We weren't like, like, you couldn't just do whatever you want, but things shut down, and even like church was like virtual, like, which was crazy for like especially some of the older people to wrap their brain around. But actually it's come out to be somewhat, there's certain things from the pandemic that were positive that came out, and one of them is like the virtual access to things. Like, if you can't, like, say I broke my leg and I can't move, I can't get out of my house, and I want to go to church, or I want to attend a a conference or something. Everything's like going virtual now, or hybrid, so that way you have access to that. Like, my grandma, sometimes she doesn't have the energy to go to church, so she'll just watch it online, and she didn't have that option before. Like, my grandpa didn't have that option. Like, it's well, he did for a little bit, but he probably didn't like it, knowing him. But it's wild, like, some of the stuff that's come out of the pandemic, that I try to look at the good things and the silver lining, because it was a really tough time and difficult time. I mean, it seems like everybody lost people during that time, and I know I lost 3 grandparents within 18 months. None of them due to COVID. They never didn't die from COVID. 2 of them were in a nursing home, which I don't know how your nursing homes were, but ours were basically like locked down. Like, I hate to say it, but they were like prisons. Like, they couldn't leave. We couldn't go in, like, to visit. We had to visit through like the window, or a door, or a glass door, and we're talking about people that are in their upper 80s. Like, it was very sad, and yeah, so I lost 2 grandparents that lived there, and my grandpa, I think he was just over it, to be honest with you, because like, he wasn't doing good health wise, but he ended up, yeah, passing away during the pandemic as well. It's just like, you run out of things to do, you have to keep moving, like you were talking about,
Mm.
and I think that's one of the main reasons my grandma's still alive, is she doesn't know how to sit still for like 5 minutes.
Mm.
She's a retired ER nurse. She's just a beast, So, um, but yeah, staying moving and being active and just doing little things, like, even if you don't want to go to the gym or exercise, like, or be a triathlete, if you just go for a walk, Get a dog. They'll make you go for walks. I've heard that trick a few times. But yeah, you really have to watch yourself in the Midwest though, because it gets to a point where like going for a walk is like you might freeze. So you got to think of another option or a backup plan. A lot of people I work with have those walking pads. Have you seen those?
I have, yeah. My wife got one during the pandemic, during the lockdowns.
I wish I would have been a partner in one of those companies. Oh my God, you would have made so much money. I sold so many of those. Um, but yeah, a bunch of people at work have them. But I have one. I lost the remote, and the only way to control it is the remote.
Oh.
And I can't order another one because it's like a knockoff brand or something. So I'm like, it's just a accent piece in my basement now. So, but I wanted to touch on your on the book a little bit more and the process of even writing a book and the idea behind it and what got you to the point where you're like, okay, I really need to share my story and share my insights with the world because it takes a lot because I know it's a process. I've talked to other authors as well, and it's a huge commitment. But what made you want to make the decision to go into that and to add the author title to your many list of titles that you have?
Yeah, so in my early recovery, then I kept it quite neat and secret, anonymous, and so on. I was in a recovery group and so on, working on
Mm-hmm.
myself, um, and I was feeling a lot better. And after 1 year, though, I was really great, but not many people on the outside knew it because it's sort of the recovery world is a bit of a anonymous and secret society in that sense.
Yep.
Um, then something happened that would change my life forever. I lost a friend of mine, a colleague and friend of mine in Singapore to suicide.
Sorry to hear
And
that.
yeah, thank you. And with that, then I was getting a lot of questions, but no answers. I was angry at
Mm.
myself. What happened? I wish I knew. I wish I could have stopped him. I wish I could have helped him. If only he would have told me when I met him a week before that he had some issues. He didn't share anything. And we hear this story always, or most of the time anyway, when
Yes.
someone leave us by suicide. And so that's when I then started to think back on where I was a year earlier. And I was, trying to play it forward, thinking, maybe this could have been me by now if I wouldn't have got the help I gotten. And with that, then I decided to take action. I set up a fund for a suicide prevention agency in Singapore
Mm-hmm.
to raise awareness and raise money for them for the suicide hotline. Uh, I then launched this campaign on LinkedIn, and this was 2019. I went out for a jog and came back to my computer, and this post had gone viral all around the world, and money was pouring in. People were donating to the cause and saying how great it was that someone speak up about this, should I say, taboo topic of suicide on LinkedIn. And
That's incredible.
so that's when I basically put my story out there. I shared that I had gone through some challenges before. And then what happened after that was that TV, newspapers, radio, the biggest business publications in Singapore contacted me, and there was media exposure first in Singapore, then it spread globally. I had journalists from all around the world wanting to hear my story. That links us to why we're on here today, Collin. I've been on
Yeah.
150 podcasts around the world since that moment, and that's when I put my story out there. So that's the background and the reason why I decided to take ownership and also open up about my recovery outside that sort of anonymous support group that I was in.
So as far as the LinkedIn post, I'm gonna have to look at that later because I did not see that. When I was doing my back, I wanted to make sure I watched the TEDx. TEDx, you said something along the lines of planning your own funeral at one point. So that was like your rock bottom at that time. And describe. You don't have to go into detail like where you were at that point, and then when the light went on and or you started to see some light, and you're like, okay, we got to do something different. And then you went and talked to somebody and asked them what the hardest thing to do exercise wise was, and that's how you became a triathlete. So take us through that little journey to the, you know, being in the darkness to like finding that light and then just breaking through it.
Yeah, so I was starting my fall in 2015 after being quite sick for a while, but that's when things really fell off. I resigned from my work because I couldn't deal with the pressures anymore, and I thought it was better that I resigned rather than being terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I came home with this bad news to my ex-wife, and she asked me and challenged me what had happened here, rather than having a dialogue about it, I filed for divorce. I just wasn't in any shape or form to have any conversation. I was just
Mm-hmm.
pushing everyone around. Anyone who tried to come close to me, I was just pushing them away. So then I isolated myself for 3 years, jumping from job to job, investing the money I had saved up and losing all of them in startups. And I was almost bankrupt after 3 years in all ways, financially, but also physically, emotionally, mentally. And I had become an alcoholic at that stage. And that's when
Mm-hmm.
basically I thought life was over. And that's when I started to plan for my own funeral. I did it in the sense of writing my will, my testament, and cleaning everything up. I didn't yet have any suicidal thoughts in the terms of making a plan for it, but I was looking at my body at that time and the way I was, eating and drinking poorly and hardly sleeping. I just knew that, something will happen here. I would die of a heart attack or something. And I remember that about 99% of my thoughts were negative. When I woke up in the morning, everything was bad. I was feeling awful. So that's in that sense, I thought my life was over. I really, really started to think so. And if we start to put those thoughts in our head, that's where we're going, right? I mean, I was just thinking that I'm not going to survive this day. So that was the space I was in. And then breaking out of that, as you
Mm-hmm.
said, then Collin, it was about opening up. I had met someone who's today my wife. Um, and I thought that before we got married then that she deserved to know because she didn't know. I was able to put on a smile and, keeping it together on the outside
Keep
while
the
I was
mask
falling off.
on.
Yeah, there we go. So everything changed when I told her what was happening, and opening up then set up my way for recovery and later on also to become, a triathlete as part of that recovery journey.
That's great. And is your wife an very active person as well, or did she kind of get you into that, or how did you get into the becoming a triathlete? Because that's like not something that everybody just picks up, you know.
Yeah, so I I loved to swim, cycle, and run also before I had my
Okay.
challenges, but I wasn't very good at it. It was difficult to
Mm-hmm.
hold it together with working too much and also consuming
Consistency.
alcohol. Yeah, so in then sobriety and working on myself, I was identifying what are the things that I love to do more of. And I also did a lot of deep work with coaches, life coaches, working on myself and then mapping out the life I wanted to have. And that included more sport. That included more of those things. And I joined cycling clubs, swim academies, and I got a coach, also a triathlon coach, and being open and with him and vulnerable and letting him giving the plan helped me. My wife was not athletic when we met, but she became part of that journey. And I think if you ask, most people actually would like to be fit and healthy. And then is if you give them the path and the way, and she became part of
Mm-hmm.
my life, then she started to exercise also. She's done a couple of half marathons and a few full marathons even. She doesn't cycle, but she does swim as well.
That's great. Yeah, you can. I feel like that's what marriage is all about: is motivating each other. From my gathered, I'm not married, but from what I see from marriages that last, is communication and basically being the biggest cheerleader for your spouse. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, you got it.
What am I missing? I'm not married, so what am I? I don't know. I don't know at all. But how long you been married now?
So this marriage is as long as my sobriety, so approaching 8 years, 7.5 years now.
So it's easier to remember that way. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and it's easier to hold together a marriage when you're sober as well. I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does your spouse ever check in, be like, hey, you probably need to, you probably need to call somebody and talk to somebody about this, or if you're getting a little grumpy, or does she notice any of the signs if things start to, go off track a little bit? I'm not saying like go off the rails, but you know what I mean.
Well, she actually was not, she didn't have a drinking problem. She was consuming some alcohol, but she took the chance also when I said I gonna stop. She also stopped, so she hasn't even have a drink since that. So we share that together as well. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, so that's make it a lot easier. I know it can be difficult if one partner wants to stop and the other
Mm,
one keep drinking. At least
yeah.
if they do it at home in front of you when you're trying to spend time together, that's a tough one
Yeah.
for many couples. I didn't have that issue, so in that sense, it's been fine. And I think if I'm off and I'm not good, I think she will remind me to go out for a workout or go to a recovery meeting to work on myself, and we have quite an
Yeah.
open dialogue about that.
Yeah, that's good. Like that comes back to the communication thing.
Mm.
Um, it's, I want to go back to talking about sleep because I personally, I want to be selfish and ask some questions because I personally struggle with sleep. Whether it's like last night, I didn't get enough sleep. And but there's other times where I get too much sleep. How did you end up being able to figure out like, hey, this is what works for me. This is like the amount of sleep I need, or if I need to nap or anything like that. Because I remember you referring to, I forgot the tennis player's name. What was the
Mm.
tennis player's name you referred to in the
Was
TEDx?
it was probably Federer. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about him sleeping like 12 hours a day, and I'm like, and you even talked about how crazy that was, and I was like, that is, if I sleep for 12 hours a day, I'm just groggy and mean, and so where do you find that balance? How do you figure that out? Do you talk to specialists, or is it kind of trial and error, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think as a start, as we discussed earlier, it seems to be quite individual. And as I
Mm-hmm.
read more into how Federer slept, it wasn't overnight. The 12 hours was also
Yeah.
including a nap, but it's still at the extreme end. Even if when I tried with my sleeping experiment, and I also had blackout windows, everything dark, the perfect temperature around 19 degrees Celsius, and sleeping with an eye mask. I had earplugs. I even was taping my mouth to breathe through my nose to really get deeper sleep and so on. And I tried every trick in the book, including not eating a few hours before, winding down slowly and so on. And I measured my sleep with digital devices, and as I did this TEDx sleeping experiment, and what I found was that when I slept 1 month, I slept 6.5 hours in average. And then I measured my performance in sport and everything that month. Then I slept 1 month, 7.5 hours per night. And I measured then and compared. And I did 2 different triathlon races during these months to see the effect. And the effect was tremendous. I mean, I performed better as a triathlete, much better. And I hit the best ever when I had 7.5 hours sleep. And looking at how I perform overall, I know. So for me, 7.5 hours is my sweet spot. I
Mm-hmm.
become dozy and groggy with 8 hours, 15 minutes sleep. That's too much for me. 6.5 hours is also too short for me. So I know where I need to be now. And the good thing with
Mm-hmm.
that is if I'm looking at my data now, and I can see it on my device, my average sleep the last 7 days. So I keep now a look at the score, and if that falls down to 7 hours 10 minutes, 7 hours 15 minutes, then I know I'm lacking 10 15 minutes. I would just try to sleep a bit more, have a nap or something like that, and to prepare for it. We discussed the best tips is to prepare for a good night's sleep, and I get a sleep coach also analyzing the AI who analyzed it, and I know that if it's a day when I didn't get any exercise, I will sleep worse, for sure. Even if that exercise means a 20-minute or half an hour walk, I will sleep worse. So that nothing would affect my sleep worse than skipping moving one day.
Yeah, moving is very important. Preparation. Yeah. So you already talked about the preparation earlier. I know hydration's another one that I've heard is very important. I wanted to ask you about the mouth taping. I just started seeing the mouth taping thing. Is that, and like, you see stuff online, like, is that really does that really work, or is that just like somebody's trying to sell mouth tape, or what was your experience with that? And do you still do that?
I think it's a fantastic and exciting topic to discuss. And the first of all to
Yeah.
say is probably, as we talk about this, Collin, is to mention that what they say, as soon as you read about it, they recommend everyone to ask the doctor if they can do it, because there could be some people it could be dangerous for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would recommend everyone to test lightly. And what I use for a start is the normal sort of surgical tape that you buy in the pharmacy, the cheap tape. I don't think we need to buy any of the fancy. No one is going to look at you anyway when you're sleeping with your tape,
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would say, if anyone is curious about it, you don't have to tape your whole mouth right away. You can tape a little bit, so you sort of have a emergency way where you can sip some air here if you have some problems. And do it step by step, right? Rather than getting all in taping all of it, which is what you see most of the time. So that's what I did. I got a bit of panic feelings the first couple of times. You woke up, wondering what's happening and so on. But I got used to it eventually. And what I learned when I read up on this is that we are born breathing through the nose. And if we are looking also at the animal world, animals are breathing through the nose. But we as humans, as we live our busy life and with stress and so on, we're changing our body physics, and we start breathing through the mouth instead. We do that short breathing rather than the deep breathing through the nose. And what happens when you do this nose breathing, then after a few weeks, you're sort of resetting your body system, which means you by default start breathing through the nose again. And on me, that had tremendously positive effects. Deeper sleep, longer sleep, better sleep, waking up more rested, even losing some body fat, and getting better, clearer skin. I had some acne on my back most of my life. That disappeared when I did the nose breathing. Of course, also it's impossible to snore. If you if you do this, you cannot, because that's through the mouth, right? So,
True.
So if anyone who's a snorer, that can also be life transformational. Yeah.
That would be me. I've gotten some complaints in the past. But what would you say about the eye mask though? Do you still do the eye mask thing?
I do it when I travel and so on, but my apartment here where I'm today in Phuket, Thailand, is pitch black already, so I don't need it.
Okay, you don't need it. Yeah.
But I carry it with me. Should I sleep in hotels or somewhere else when I need it? Also, when I commute on a flight or so on, I always wear it, and it helps as well.
Okay. Yeah, I have one. I've used it before. I just haven't done it consistently, so I'm gonna have to do that. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about your book and what your main message is in your book, and how you've so let's start with the main message of the book, and who would be the main person that would benefit the best, or is it a book kind of that anyone could pick up?
Yeah, so my book, Executive Loneliness, is about my journey, which we discussed today. It's the book I wrote in around during the pandemic. That was my project during the pandemic, the lockdowns.
Good project,
So
yeah.
Yeah, so I got my message out there. My story of recovery is there. Um, Also, the story of others. So I was interviewing senior executives, especially around isolation in the workplace. And why focusing on senior executives? It is, well, it starts at the top, right? And if a leader at the top sets the scene for the culture to be safe, where you can be vulnerable, you can be open, then
Mm-hmm.
they are creating that psychological safety for the organization. It's really hard for it to start at the bottom. So that's why wrote it addressed to the senior executives, because that's where I was and that's where I struggled. And that's where my friend Simon was when he died of suicide. So I wrote about my downs, I wrote about my ups, and also best practice and tips. So that's the book I wrote then 5 years ago. I'm now writing my next book, which is more forward, positive, and on the holistic kind of leadership in the organization. So that's a bit about the two books.
I mean, and you brought up something. You brought up spirituality, a little bit there, or did you say mindfulness? I'm sorry what the buzzword there was, but I wanted to ask you about spirituality because I know it's a big part of recovery, and having that, relationship to, some type of higher power that's not you, and how does that look like for you? And has that been something that you've been consistent with throughout your life, or has that changed? I mean, because I know I grew up Catholic. I left the church for a while, then I came back. Now I'm Catholic again, and I had to figure out what worked for me. And it's different for everybody, just like the sleep thing.
Yeah, so I grew up Christian in Sweden, and I think anything that was pushed to me by my parents and the
Oh yeah,
school, I rejected. So I didn't really care much about it. In recovery, yes, it was reintroduced to me, more of in the form of spirituality,
yeah,
and that had a very positive effect on me. As it happened, also my wife was or is religious, so that came with the religion, which helped because then I could also see how it support her and help her, and so it worked hand in hand. Just like we both gave up drinking, we also then doubled down on meditation, prayer, and being closer to God, and it has really helped me, and having that other external source to also hand things over to.
awesome. Um, I thought of something earlier that I just popped back into my head. You were talking about the device that you wear. Is there a particular device that you wear that tracks most of your stuff, or do you have different devices for different tracking, or do you just use one device?
I use the Garmin watch, and they have
Garmin.
the app as well, and it's okay. I know that you have many other brands out there. Maybe there could be some better, but it does a decent, good enough job for me anyway.
Yeah, I have an Apple one, and the I had the newest Apple one because the older ones didn't track the sleep. So that's when I started like noticing stuff like it show my REM sleep and my deep sleep and how much I woke up. And I woke up a lot more than I thought because I guess I wake up and I wasn't really like fully awake. And that was where I was like, whoa, that's not good. That's alarming. And that's why I did the sleep study. I'm talking to my doctor this month and trying to figure out, best practices for me. Um, because yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, and I don't know what my sweet spot. I don't know what my sweet spot is. I roughly know from experience, but I've had times where I've only had 5 hours of sleep and been great. But I've also had times where I've had 7 hours of sleep and felt like crap. So it just I'm not really sure, but it's if you really want to get things done and really want to figure things out, you're going to figure it out if you're determined enough. And it sounds like you're someone who you talked about, you used the word relentless a lot in your TEDx, meaning like if you're going to do something, you're going full force. And um, that is the mindset you have to get some of these things done. Otherwise, it's just procrastination circle and cycle of procrastination. Like, yeah, I'll get to that, I'll do that, but I know how that goes, and it's not fun. And the more you procrastinate something, it seems like the more challenging it is. Even if it's something as simple as like cleaning the dishes or something, taking out the trash or whatever it is. I've noticed that it could be like the smallest thing that I procrastinate, but it's once I do those things or do those little things, all those little things lead up to the small wins lead up to big wins is what I'm trying to say basically. um Not sure if you agree with that, but I've heard a lot of people say that, or something similar to that I've talked with.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of work on getting the clarity in my life. I worked with coaches. I worked with even John Mattone, who was the coach of Steve Jobs, and I've done many different
Oh man.
courses and so on looking for my why, looking for my purpose. And
Yeah.
once you have identified some of those, it's about perhaps finding the coaches, mentors, communities around the topics that you're passionate about. Like suicide prevention is a course that burns for me, and
Yeah.
I keep doubling down. I even study now at postgraduate level at the school, a diploma in psychotherapy and counseling, and I have done courses in suicide prevention now.
Mhm.
I studied addiction at the postgraduate level, working towards a master's. So that's indeed the word relentless. Become passionate
Yeah.
about and double down on what is your space. Get excited about it, and that's when I think you have a meaningful life.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, purpose is very important because without purpose, I mean, what keeps you going? What keeps you driven? And that's why I think a lot of people go towards, substance abuse because it takes them out of you know, it changes your reality, and that's enough for a while. It's changing that reality, but then at some point, you're just like sick and tired of being sick and tired, like you were saying, like we were talking about earlier. Um, Yeah, I really wanted to pick your brain about that, especially the sleep thing, man, cuz like it's I've every I think every therapist, every psychiatrist that I've seen has brought up sleep. Like every time. Like, how's your sleep? Like that's like the first question they ask me. I'm just like, not great. Or it can be improved. And that's kind of been one thing that's been on my mind this year that I really want to hammer down before the year's over is, what is a good, healthy sleep schedule or sleep habits for me.
Mm.
And I'm getting there. So I really appreciate you sharing your input on that. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about loneliness because you brought that up when I sent out, I always send out a little thing for people to fill out before the podcast, and I'm someone who struggles with loneliness and isolation. I am single. I live alone. I have my own house. I work from home. I have to make myself get out of my house. Like I have to create activities or, make sure or create an errand or something just to get out of my house sometimes. And I know that's something that impacts a lot of people, especially people who work from home and had to adjust to that and still are adjusting to it. Like 5 years in, I'm just at first I was like, oh, this is awesome, but now I'm like, oh man, I haven't left my house today. Like I gotta get outside and do something. Like um yeah, what would be some of your tips for dealing with like loneliness and isolation?
Yeah, so I think if we done some work on our purpose and our why, and we mapped out, what are the causes that we are passionate about, what are the charities we want to support, what are the topics we want to drive, what are the sports or the activities that we like to be part of, then it's about mapping out all of those and then see, okay, do they have any clubs? Do they have any communities in this space? So that's what I done. So being a coach, I belong to a coaching community. I belong to recovery groups in the various cities I travel.
Mm-hmm.
I also belong to swim academy, running a club, cycling clubs everywhere basically where I travel and so on. I have cycle clubs. Also the suicide prevention where I'm part of a group where I'm doing charity. Then on top of that, professional associations, so I belong to professional speaking association in where I spend time mainly in Singapore. I belong there, but I reached out to the other chapters around in Asia, and I'm helping them as a volunteer as well, and I travel around to support them. So I get a lot of my connection from doing meaningful things. And being disciplined around it. I talk a lot about social health. We know physical health is important. We know mental health and social health is equally important. So I'm an introvert. And I'm a workaholic, so I need to control myself so I don't isolate and work too much. So that
Mm-hmm.
means that I force in my calendar social activity. So after our podcast here, it's morning here in Phuket, Thailand. I will go out for a 2-hour bike ride with a cycle club here in the nature park here. And I know that perhaps in some part of the world, including Sweden, where it's getting towards the autumn and it will be cold. Also in the US, of course, it's cold, but then
Mm-hmm.
those clubs also operate during the winter. Most of them will have indoor bike rides or whatever. So it's always something. But doing it deliberately and disciplining ourselves and seeing it just like we show up for work at time, we also need to show up for our social commitments. And I would say this is a daily dose. We need it daily.
That as well as just like relaxing. I mean, reminding yourself to relax, especially if you're somebody that's go 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 all the time. Like, obviously sleep's important, but just being able to wind down and relax is also crucial. It's like a balancing act with all those things. From what I've learned anyway. Um, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Did you have a few more minutes, or did you have to? I know we started a little late, so I don't want to keep you from the cycling club. I know that's important.
Still got a few more minutes, Collin, but yeah, looking forward to continue and staying in touch. And I hope that we touched on some topics that are of importance. And I think there's one message that I would love to spread, which is something that I always talk about. It's also in my book, Executive Loneliness, and that is the importance of speaking up when we have something on our mind. We tend to protect our secrets. We are scared to be vulnerable about the issues that we are facing. And I would say a message to everyone who's listening, try to think in the good times about building up a few safe spaces. And it can be 1 or 2 colleagues at work, 1 or 2 friends at home, some people in the community who you feel that you can trust and be vulnerable with, and have a deliberate conversation with them and agree that you can trust each other, you can share what is there for each other and be there for each other. And I did this with quite some men over the last few years, and it doesn't have to be always alcoholics, but I created actually a men's group for that reason. We're over 20
Mm-hmm.
men in this group now, and we use this group to log on tomorrow night. We have our next Zoom call for 1 hour, but we also share online what we're going through in our life. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine 20 guys in a group, life will be a roller coaster. It will be up and down. There will be someone who just lost a job, someone who just lost a partner, someone who's just gone through a serious illness, for example. So we can be there for each other. And just recently, one of the guys, he lost his mum, and he would normally have just been grinding through this, not telling anybody about it, but he opened up in the group now, was able to process his, express his feelings, and really, really going through the emotions, which gave him then the strength to be there for his sister and the rest of the family and so
Yep.
on. So
That's very
so,
important. Mm-hmm.
so that I think is for everyone a message here, Collin, to just look around you and see who you can be open and vulnerable with.
Yeah, in my last podcast episode, I brought up the saying that which you probably heard a million times as well, is secrets keep you sick. And you got to share it. You got to let it out, because otherwise it's just going to get heavier and heavier. And having that like community to share that with is so important. And I didn't have that before I got into recovery. I I was very much a chameleon wherever I went. I was a different version of myself. But now I'm just me. Like, you get me all the time, even at work. Like, I mean, I have to tone down some of the jokes sometimes. But besides that, like, everybody knows, who I am, what I'm about, what I'm doing. I'm not saying everybody has to be as open with publicly about it like I am, but I do it because the more I do it, the more I hear from other people that are like, "Hey, I really appreciate that you're doing that. Like, keep going." And because I don't want to feel like self-absorbed or like just doing this for my ego or anything like that. Because as we know, ego is a huge downfall and will take us to places that we don't want to go back to. So.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Nick. I'm glad we were able to connect. But yeah, I saw you send me your WhatsApp, so I'll have to add you on there. I just started using that not too long ago. Us Americans are just particular to certain things, but I'll definitely shoot you a message on there so we can stay connected, because I really enjoyed the conversation, man.
Thank you so much, Collin. It's been great talking to you.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day. You're just getting started. My day's winding down. So take care, okay?
Thank you. Take care also.
Yeah. Yep. Bye.